Hello and welcome to episode 40 of Mr. Industries' Ford Falcon Crusty Wagon project. Now in this episode I unveil the successful repair of my dash. Everything works and yay, hooray! But this is several days if not weeks before I actually air the episode, and that alternator inside that engine bay there, it does not work. And I don't know if that's because the wiring's been butchered or because it's just been sitting around for over a decade doing nothing, or because I've run the motor and wrecked it by not having the ignition on. I don't know, but tomorrow I'm taking my Triton back to the auto electrician for a reoccurring airbag fault because new cars are a pain in the ass like that. And while I'm at it, I'm going to surprise the auto electrician with my old car alternator and say, can you fix it? Can you tell me if it works? And I'm sure he'll be surprised and delighted to deal with something old and basic like that. And hopefully it either works or it's easy to fix and it doesn't cost me too much money, because of budget constraints really. Actually, who am I kidding? There are no budget constraints. The budget will be whatever it is once this car is finished. And I will endeavour to be as frugal as possible, but I need an alternator that works because no alternator means no reliability, and I'll start by taking this one in and getting it checked out. In other news, still no seat. I rang the upholsterer last week and I said, how's that seat going? And he said, oh look mate, I've been flat out, I've had lots of jobs, some staff have been off sick, da 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 da. When do you need it by? And I said, to be perfectly blunt, I don't need it yet, I still have my dash to fix. And he said, when will you have that done by? And I said, but I don't know, I'm still working on it. And he said, okay then. And I said, tell you what, I'll just ring you every Thursday and get an update to see how things are working out, and we'll go from there. And he went, okay mate, and I went, sweet, and I hung the phone up because I still don't really need the seat and I need to get this dash fixed, but I hate working on wiring and I hate working on XC dashboards, so it's there, it will remain. But once the alternator's fixed and I know it works, maybe the whole thing will miraculously power up and everything will be solved, but I won't know until the alternator's been repaired and reinstalled back into the car. And just like that, one alternator is out. So it's the following evening and I'm back from the auto electrician and I got my alternator tested and it works like a charm. Saw 16 volts on the auto electrician's test bench, and he did say to me this is a external regulator alternator. Now, I didn't really know that was a thing. I mean, back in my teens when I had a Ford Escort, it already had an alternator that had an internal regulator, so I didn't need to worry about any of that stuff. And this is the first time I've come across an alternator that has an external regulator. I mean, the one in my sedan works fine, so he said, you need an external regulator, and he got one out of a box that he had on his shelf and he showed it to me and he said, it's one of these. And I went, I've seen one of those before somewhere in my car. So tonight I embarked on a bit of a mission to find it, and while it's not like the one in my sedan, it I think is where did I look? It's this. I think this is my external regulator, because the auto electrician pointed out that the back of the alternator will have a DF and D plus on it. You can see there, DF, D plus, and this little aluminium box that I found in the back of my car has a DF and a D plus on it. Now I've found the plug in my engine bay, so hopefully once the alternator's in and I plug this back in and I have a judicious look at my wiring, I might get my dash lights back, because the auto electrician actually said if you don't have your regulator plugged into your alternator, you won't get signal to your dash, and you probably won't get any dash lights either. So this might have solved my problem. I might have to do this, put it all together, turn the car on, and if I get dash lights, problem solved. No dash out. I guess leave the dash in the car. Then I can ring the guy that's doing my seat and say, I need my seat back next weekend. Just because I've got no more reason to be underneath the dash doing anything. So let's go with that. Okay then, alternator is back in, and I've put what I think is the regulator down there. I've plugged it into the wiring harness, and I will address the rest of the drama after I get the car running again with the new carbie on it, because that's where I'm actually at with all of this, putting the new carbie on the car. That's why all this is disassembled, and that's why that alternator was off, because this is a good chance to do it. Might as well do it now. Back of the car, and now it's time to test it and see if it's actually going to do anything, because I've got a alternator light in the dash now that is plugged in, but I still don't know if it's charging the battery, so let's find out. Nope. Still not charging. So I'm going to need to go do some more homework, and maybe I'll have another solution to try. Okay, so I've established that this regulator doesn't work, but I did learn of a trick that I should probably try on this, since we've established that it doesn't go. So I've got nothing left to lose by trying this trick, and that is to whack it on a bench top and hopefully that brings it back to life. So I'll bung it back in the car and we'll see if that's done any good. I was actually online trying to find information on how to test one of these 2-pin regulators, and I found a guy here in Australia with an XW Falcon that was talking about how to test your regulator, which turned out to be doing the voltage test to see if the regulator is actually working. But during the video he actually said, give it a quick whack and then put it in and see if it comes back to life, and if it does come back to life, you need a new one, because obviously it's worn out and the signal's not getting through. So if this brings it back to life, then I'll know where I stand, and the problem is the regulator, and I just need to get another regulator. It's not some kind of under dash airy fairy problem that I'm going to have to continue to look at. It should theoretically just be a case of getting a new regulator and then going from there with whatever other dramas the car has. So I'll set that up, I'll turn my voltmeter on, I'll go start the car, we'll see. It's working. Up she goes. Excellent. "14 volts is exactly what I wanted to see. It means my alternator circuit's fine, and my regulator's working, and whatever's going on inside the dashboard, that's a whole separate issue. Damn it." So there you go, that backyard hack I just learnt from another YouTuber has brought my charge circuit back to life, and it means the focus of my dramas is the regulator. So I should probably go see my old electrician and pick that regulator up tomorrow morning, and then I can put it in the car, and then I can focus on what's going on underneath my dash, because something else is going on there which is cutting my dash in and out of operation. So that'll be the next step in this video, to go through that and see if I can figure out what's going on in there, because I have charging circuit now and I've narrowed that down to the regulator being the problem. So on to the next part of this video. So moving on to the under dash wiring, this is all a bit of a mess. Now there's some stuff in here that doesn't need to be here. There's some stuff in here that's a fire hazard, like this for instance, which is a hot wire, which I assume was plugged into probably the back of this switch here that I've disconnected. So I need to tidy all this up, and there's one other thing that concerns me. I'll just give the car a bit of a bump to start it. Now the alternator light is on, and if I wiggle this, I get instruments, and then I don't get instruments. So I've got the alternator lights off, and the tacho's working, and the oil pressure gauge is working. So something's going on. The light comes on, and it sometimes kills the difference. Got oil, got temp, got tacho, alternator light is off. Something in this fuse box has got a dry joint in it. So something in here in this fuse box isn't 100% because it's making my dash turn on and off intermittently. So I should probably pop the fuses out one by one, test all the wiring, and see if there's a drama going on inside this fuse box that's going to keep killing my dash. So I'm not out of the woods yet. Having the alternator work is a big step in the right direction, but I really need my dash to work. I want all my toys to work. Feels like I'm close, but I'll just have to spend some more time tidying all this up. All of that came out of the engine bay and under the dash too. Not real sure what it all did, but it was definitely added in by somebody else, because it's all non-factory looking. That bit there, actually no, it all looks like someone's homemade wiring loom. So I'll pull out what I can. I'll check overall. Someone's been soldering into the back of this too, which doesn't fill me with confidence either. From all of this is the car runs and starts and has alternator, and the gauges mostly work except for the fuel gauge because the sender is toast, and in order for me to get the fuel gauge to work I'm going to have to think of a creative solution for either rewiring the sender or adapting a sender from a sedan in-tank sender, which I'm not ruling out. I'm not going to cover that in this episode. So the car has remained with the battery connected for minutes at a time and nothing's caught fire, although my dome light does appear to be on all the time, but I'll just pull the bulb out of that. That's an easy solution. So yes, progress is being made. So I'm back. It's the following weekend and I did indeed get to the electrician and pick up a new regulator. Now the auto electrician was quite delighted to talk about these old school things. He is a Ford guy from way back when. He was telling me that when he did his apprenticeship way back in the 80s, he actually got to drive an XC panel van that had the V8 motor and all the GS goodies. So when I talked about my XC, he was excited to be able to relate. And when I went in to grab this regulator here, he asked me if the old regulator was a much taller one with a tan strip around it, and I said yes it is. And he said, oh, you've got one of the old mechanical ones. He goes, these new Bosch ones, they're electronic. He said, but make sure it's earthed to the body when you install it. And I said, no problem. And I've just dropped this nut underneath for that. There we go, got it. So I will bolt this back into the car nice and firmly so it has an earth. I'll plug my plug in. We should be all good. This should be nice and quick. You could tell that the electrician enjoyed working with the old stuff because his face lit up as he talked about the old school Ford stuff that he was familiar with. Which I think is probably the case for a lot of guys, probably slightly older than I am, that come from that generation where everything was simpler and everything could be fixed by handy people. So battery back in. Should really shell myself some new cables because these bodged up BMW cables probably aren't the best option. Right, time to fire it up. Don't really want to buy a new battery for this car just yet, since it's just starting to come together. Let's try again. see if we've got, yes we do, we've got 13.5 volts, slowly climbing, so that's good. Alternator works now, hooray! So it's 9 AM on a Sunday morning and I've had a breakthrough. My intermittent dash fault has come down to one wire and one fuse cradle. Now, I looked at my workshop manual and I noticed there is a yellow and blue wire leading into the dash to power everything up. It goes to the fuse box. So I thought to myself, I'll trace that wire to the fuse box and I'll have a look at that wire. And as it turns out, it's actually something very simple. The old school glass fuse in the cradle is actually loose in the cradle because one of the clamps for the cradle is actually not tight on the fuse, and when you wriggle the fuse box, the fuse wriggles inside the cradle and disconnects itself from the dash. So all I really need to do is, that fuse there is just floating in that cradle there, and that pickup there isn't even tight. So when you wriggle this wire here, it makes the fuse wobble inside the cradle until it disconnects itself. So I'll pull that fuse out, I'll clamp that together, and hopefully my intermittent dash problems cease, and then I can just tuck this back up under there as best as I can with this broken fuse carrier and pop it up out of the way, tidy all this up and wrap this video up, which will be tremendous because alternator gauges work except for fuel, and the intermittent dash issue will be resolved once this fuse carrier is sorted out, probably with a little bit of tin foil or some vice grip or some, I'll probably just give that fuse cradle a bit of a squeeze with the fuse out of it and see if I can get those clamps to come together a bit closer and clamp the fuse again. And then once that's done, it's tucked up out of the way, I'm going to ignore the random dash lights on the dash that don't work, like my high beam indicator light and my right indicator light, because in the grand scheme of things I can resolve all of those small details closer to the time the car needs to get a roadworthy, because I don't want to pull the dash out. It's a shitty job. So right now I need instruments to work, alternator to charge, car to start, and somewhere to sit for this project to move forward. So that's the plan. So let's do that. Alright, I've given that fuse cradle a tweak and now the fuses are nice and firm. I might actually go through, do them all, because all it took was to pop that fuse out, squeeze those clamps together, and now that fuse is rock solid and it's not interfering with the signal to the dash. So good result. Alright, I've fired the car up. I've gone through the fuse box to check all the fuses. Now I'm wriggling it and it's making no difference to the instruments. I've got tack, I've got oil pressure, everything appears to be doing what it's supposed to do. The alternator light is off on the dash. So far so good. Let's see if I've disturbed anything since I tucked all the wires back up under the dash. Still working, oil pressure light, tacho working. Boop, boop. Excellent. Summary time for episode 40 of the Michelin Trees Ford Falcon 351 Crusty Wagon project. Now, this has been a bit of a side quest that happened while I was doing the carburetor, and today I can officially wrap it up because the alternator charges, the alternator regulator has been replaced, so that all works now. That under dash issue that the car has been plagued with since I got it home has been narrowed down to a fuse cradle being too loose, So I've sorted all that out now, and now the dash functions as well as you can expect it to function until I pull it all out and replace all the blown bulbs, which is going to be something that's going to happen way down the track when I've decided that it needs to be done. Because for the time being, I just want this car to be turnkey, start up, back it out of the driveway, charge its own battery, runs its own thermofans, and it's going to do all of those things for the time being, because there are still many more pressing things to address before I dive into the nuts and bolts of replacing dashboard bulbs. So, good result. Dashboard mostly functional, alternator charging, and thermofans turning on, all that stuff. So, excellent. And next week, I'll have the seat, because it's over there. Hopefully it's out of camera shot, but I do have the seat back at last, and next week I'll tell you all about that. Now I've just got a phone call from the upholsterer, and it's 20 to 8 on a Saturday morning, which was a surprise out of the blue. I was sitting down for my morning coffee and the phone rang, and the upholsterer guy said, "Your seat's ready, but brace yourself, it's taken a lot of work to get it to this point." And I said, "Oh, how much is the bill then?" And he said, "I suggest you come down and we'll have a talk."